Got any parenting advice for someone that has
Toddlers?
I have toddlers?
Oh man, Benadryl for road trips. I'm joking about don't dose your kids. Anybody that sees this, don't dose your children.
Welcome to another episode of Bored and Curious. I'm your host, Mary Katz, and today's guest is Nick Morgan. Nick has been writing songs for many years, but has recently decided, hey, maybe I want to get some of my stuff out there. So let's help him out a little bit, folks. He also happens to have quite the sense of humor, so I hope you guys get a good laugh out of that as well. Before we go any further, make sure you are subscribed to the podcast or following, whichever it may be, and also check us out on social media. Alrighty, let's get started.
Well, welcome to Bored and Curious. I am so excited to have you today. I've been listening to your songs, and they are not only heart-wrenching and beautiful, and at times you channel your inner Rodney Carrington a bit. So we will get into all of that. But first off, go ahead and tell me, Nick, when did you realize that you wanted to write songs?
I figured it out. Well, I've been a huge country music fan. Well, music fan in general. My mom was she was a little bit of a hippie from back in the day. I grew up on all of the '60s stuff, and then she was also a huge Neil Diamond fan, and so I got plenty of that. Three Dog Night and Beach Boys, and so I've been listening. I've been deep into music forever, but I was always brought up around country music, and then probably whenever I first decided I wanted to start writing my own stuff was I'm going to say probably around 90, 95, 96, 97, somewhere in there is when I heard The Great Divide for the first time on CMT. And it was, what was that song they had a video for? I think it was Pour Me a Vacation or something like that. And off that first Break in the Storm album that came out, and all of a sudden I was like, this is different. This is stuff that it wasn't Pour Me a Vacation, but it was like, this is stuff that I can kind of, I get this. This sounds like home to me. And I was like, okay, so there's a different world for songwriters out there. And so I really kind of leaned in to learn how to play the guitar and stuff whenever I was in high school about that time. And I kind of tapered off, and then I never actually even considered doing it for anybody but just my own enjoyment until I got into college there at Texas Tech. And that was right about the time that Pat Green and Corey Morrow had already started getting really big. Mm-hmm. Wade Bowen had recorded that Live at the Blue Light way back in 2001. And then I discovered those guys, and I was like, these guys are writing stuff people are listening to music about. The world I came from, drinking beer in pastures, and just generally being up to no good kind of stuff. And I was like, I can write songs like that. So that's kind of what got me started. Yeah, that's really kind of where I decided to start leaning into it. And I started looking out at things and trying to find people to play with. It kind of went from there.
Awesome. So, would you say that those were, so I know that you just said that your mom kind of was a hippie, and so you listened to more of stuff from her era, but do you think that the stuff that you listened to in high school was more influential in a way?
I would say so. I got my appreciation for music from mom and dad because, mom was a little bit of a hippie. I mean, she's still a Texas girl. She grew up around Sweetwater, Midland, Odessa. And then dad's born and raised Flatlander, just like me, from up on the Caprock, a farm kid. So he was listening to Barbara Mandrell and Reba McEntire and the Oak Ridge Boys and Alabama. I learned to appreciate music with them, and even my grandparents listening to all their old vinyl while we were laying around the house on Sunday after eating a whole bunch of chicken fried steak or something. So I learned to appreciate it then. But yeah, the stuff that influenced my music the most is probably a lot of the things I listened to late high school, early college, and then even some early high school stuff, because I'm guilty of getting into all the grunge stuff, the Pearl Jam and the all of them. That's what most all my friends listen to. So we listened to a bunch of Pearl Jams, Nirvanas, Bush. I mean, everybody.
Do you remember the first song that you wrote?
The first ever song I wrote, probably not, because I also listened to a lot of Chris Ledoux whenever we take road trips up to Colorado. We had the giant cassette box where I had literally every cassette he ever put out, and I tried to write all these cowboy songs. And I was kind of a part-time cowboy growing up. Both my folks were teachers, but I grew up running cows for my granddad and stuff. I wanted to write cowboy songs. It wasn't real, so I don't remember any of them, but the first one that I ever played for people, I remember it extremely well. I don't play it anymore, but I remember it very well.
You don't play it angemore because
I just kind of outgrew it. As I grew and my writing got better, I saw all the things that were wrong with it, how repetitive it was, and how it don't get me wrong, I was proud as punch of it as a starting point whenever I was 18 years old. I thought it was great. And all my friends thought it was great. Of course, we weren't drinking beer at 18 because we wouldn't do that.
Never.
I don't know if there's any kids watching this, but we weren't the most sophisticated people in the world, but I thought it was great. And it's fairly typical. I guess about 19-year-old kid breaks up with his first serious girlfriend and writes a sad, sappy song about it. And that's the one I remember. And then from that point on is where it really kind of took off, and I really started trying to write a lot of things.
And now as an adult, you do tend to write, I guess, more sad country songs.
I do, and it's not on purpose. It's not on purpose, because anybody that knows me will tell you I'm about as far as you can get from like the overtly morose, sad, melancholy person ever. I'm always trying to be in a good mood and stay positive. Wait, there's a quote somewhere about something about how sad country songs make me happy, and I can't remember what it was, but I just like them. I think, who is it? John Moreland writes some of the most beautiful stuff I've ever heard. And it's so depressing. It makes you feel like you're living in Seattle in the rain and just everything's in your head. I'll listen to that. And somebody will say, "What's wrong?" Not a thing in the world. I'm just listening to the radio.
My husband pulled that one on me. He was listening to my playlist at the gym, and he was like, "Why is your playlist is so sad?" And I'm like, "It's just what I like. I don't know, but like, I'm a happy person. That's just what I like."
I get it. Trust me. I absolutely get it. Yeah, I don't write them that way intentionally, but I did. I've decided whenever I finally get an album put out, it's going to be we're just going to title it Sad Songs and Cautionary Tales, because I've got a tendency to follow that Chris Knight path where it's either somebody's getting their heart broke or somebody's going to get murdered. And unintentional, it just comes easy, which I don't know, could speak to my character. Maybe that's something I should get checked out.
So you grew up listening to older stuff, like the stuff that I'm only probably maybe 5-10 years younger than you, maybe something like that. So I grew up listening to Reba and Vince and Brooks and Dunn and all of that. And I didn't hear any of the Nirvana and stuff like that until I got to college. My daddy thought all that was just evil and of Satan, so I wasn't allowed to listen to it. But bringing things into modern times, who do you like now? Out of the new crowd.
Are we talking Texas centric or just in general?
In general.
I've got to say, the women in country music have been doing some like phenomenal things. Like I discovered Caitlin Smith and Morgan Wade this past year, and oh my God, I can't get enough of either one of them. They're just incredible. Caitlin Smith's got such a powerful freaking voice, and just writes such beautiful, well-crafted songs. I'm a huge fan of hers. And then Morgan Wade, she kind of falls into that same vein of stuff that I do. She writes a lot of sad country songs, but damn, they're good. Beyond that, I'm guilty of kind of shying away from some of the big Nashville stuff, and it's not even intentional. It just isn't really what I listen to a lot anymore. I'll lean a lot more towards the singer-songwriter types. So people like that. Jason Isbell is still one of my, he's not an up-and-comer anymore. He's already huge, and I actually married a girl that used to play fiddle in a band out there in Lubbock, Texas. And but yeah, those are the two biggest ones in country that I've discovered here this past year that I've just listened to, on repeat.
So let's take it forward. We've done past, we've done present, let's go a little in the future. Is there someone, let's call it the next 5 to 10 years, that it just your dream to work with? Who would it be? You don't even have to name one, just make a list, man.
Ever since I heard Rodney Foster's, it was live at the Continental Club. I think it was called You Ready for the Big Show? It's a live album. Ever since I heard that, I always liked him. Ever since I heard the old Foster and Lloyd stuff for Del Rio 1980, always been a fan of his. But I heard that where he kind of a songwriter again. So he gave a lot of the backstories behind the songs. And then what really kind of drove the point home for me, how talented he was whenever he told the whole story about that song, Went for a Ride. If you've never heard it, you need to go find it and listen to it, because he does this whole 2 or 3 minute long spiel about the backstory behind that song. And it's just beautiful. So yeah, if anything, I'd love to, learn how to co-write with that guy, because it seems like everything he puts his stamp on just turns out beautiful. Okay. And I'm just a huge fan.
Yeah, the thing you're talking about sounds familiar, but I may have to revisit that just to make sure actually.
Yeah, I think it was called Are You Ready for the Big Show? But, oh yeah, it's one of my favorite albums of his. It's a live show, but I think it's pretty well all acoustic. They've got the stand-up bass and acoustic guitars and minor drum kit, bass there with the brushes and all that. It's really kind of low key, but you can hear, every single word. You can hear the banter back and forth with the crowd. It's one of my favorite albums of all time.
Awesome.
It's at least in the top 5.
So if things took off for you, we're going to put it out there. Things are going to take off for you. Put out in the universe.
I'm hoping.
A little of that.
Fingers crossed.
Are you thinking, I'm a Texas boy, I'm going to stay in Texas? Or are you like, I will move to Nashville like this minute?
Oh, no. If I can make a living doing music, I'd go wherever I had to. Both my kids will be out of school in the next 5 to 6 years. So at that point, I'm kind of free to roam around.
Yeah, okay. Well, let's head on into the story behind the song. Take us behind the scenes of Main Street.
I wish I had a better story for that one, but the fact of the matter is we were the Blue Lot in Lubbock, Texas, legendary. Well, now it's legendary. Back then it was just, we're going to go to the Blue Lot. It was just kind of like home. Whenever Tom still owned the place, I think we started doing some open mic stuff during the summertime on Sunday nights. And we were sitting on the patio in front of the Blue Lot in Tom's Daiquiri kind of early. And we were just sitting there and I saw one of my exes walking down the street, not even particularly one that I had a deep, loving relationship with, just somebody that I used to see. And I saw her walking with her new boyfriend. And I just started humming a tune in my head while we were sitting there waiting to play. And then, of course, I went in my backpack and got my stuff out and just started writing the words down, getting the melody in my head. And I tried it on stage. I tried half of that song on stage that night because those Sunday open mics back then were not a big deal. There was about 15 people there. It was all the local songwriters were there. And we'd kind of workshop things and try it out. And that's how that one came about. And then I just kind of picked and chose some other little instances from my life history and filled out the rest of it.
Very good. What's a beautiful song? And speaking of beautiful songs, for anyone who wants to shed tears and have their heart ripped out, Heaven Falling Down.
That one is pretty close to home. Not me personally, but my best friend's brother went through a very similar situation. And this all happened whenever we were in high school. Had a rough divorce with his wife. Got into booze and pills. And of course, that didn't make things any better with him being able to see his kids and kind of all that. And that always stuck with me, even though it happened whenever I was 14. He overdosed and took his own life, as far as we know, intentionally. They didn't get there in time. And something similar happened. And I can't even remember if it was something I saw on the news or what, whenever I was in Lubbock at college. But all of that kind of came back to me. And I just remembered it. And that all came out as is on the page in about 15 minutes.
Wow. And
I was really hesitant, again, because I kind of get pigeonholed for writing sad songs. I was really hesitant to play that for anybody. And then I played it for another one of the buddies of mine that was in a band there in Lubbock, and he's like, you've got to play that. He's like, you've got to put that on stage and get it recorded because that's incredible. That's the first song I ever wrote where I felt really good about it, but at the same time nervous to play it for anybody. And then the second I started playing it for people, I got the kind of feedback on that song everybody dreams of having, people saying that's incredible, that's phenomenal, you've got to get that out. And so that's what I've been trying to do.
Yeah. A little PSA about depression and when times are really tough and you feel like you can't really make it through things, and how important it is to get the help that you need.
Yeah, and I would. And I got in the habit of, without trying to, whenever I was playing shows and stuff, especially if it was a quieter one and it wasn't like a bar atmosphere, if it was just kind of a sit down and listen to music, I'd try to toss that out and be like, hey, you know what? Come talk to me if you can't find anybody else. Because my dad used to tell me that all the time. It's a permanent solution for a temporary problem. And so I've always taken that kind of serious because there's been several instances of my life and then I'm reminded every time. So I like to try to reach out and tell people we care about them and let them know you love them. Just be there for the people around you.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I'm having flashbacks here. I interviewed Kent Blasey about If Tomorrow Never Comes, that he wrote with Garth Brooks. And like, it's very much on the same wavelength. Not necessarily a depression sense, but I mean, that song, you don't know.
Yeah. Well, important themes like that pervade all genres, all levels of musicianship. It's the things that are important are the things that people are going to write about.
Absolutely. Things that we all relate to. Yeah.
Yeah. Because everybody's been there on both sides, unfortunately.
And so moving on to My Country Home.
A much happier story.
Yes.
Well, relatively happy. There's actually I had a live recording of it at one point where I gave the whole spiel about this to music right before I played it. But whenever I was in college, in the span of 10 days' time, I got served with papers from a car accident that I was involved in at 18 years old. It was 1 year, 360 days after the accident. So just inside just inside the limit to where somebody could file a suit for personal injury. So I got sued, was the first thing that happened. And then not a week later, we were, and this is like mid-July, whenever all this was going down. A week later, we had just rented this big house, me and three of my buddies, and all their girlfriends were over, and we were listening to the radio. We were running the dishwasher, washer, dryer. I mean, everything in the house. It was like 105 degrees outside. And all of a sudden we start smelling smoke and the power goes out. We had blown this old fuse box on the back of the house and our house caught on fire. It got put out really quickly, but essentially I was homeless for a few days, and I was supposed to go to work that night. And I called my boss and I'm like, I know that I've got to get vacation time approved ahead of time, but I'm going to take 3 or 4 days off because I don't have a place to live right now. So I'm going to go back to my grandparents' place in Amherst, Texas, 45, 50 miles away, because my folks had just moved to Austin. And I said, I'm going to go stay at my grandparents' place for a few days until they can get our house fixed and we can have it livable again. I said, and it's just been a really bad week, so I'm leaving Lubbock. I'm done. And so I did, just like in that song. I threw my guitar in the pickup and a bag full of clothes that all smelled like an electrical fire. And I went to the strip and I got a cooler full of beer. And I went to my grandparents' house and I drove tractor all day and I did work on the farm all day. And I sat on the front porch of their house and looked out at the stars, really for the first time in about 2 years at that point, that I had gotten out of Lubbock, Texas, and I'd gotten back out into the country, kind of where I grew up, and I realized how much I kind of missed it. I always knew that I missed living out in the country and being out there so I could shoot guns and raise hell and drink beer and not get in trouble and stuff. But I realized just how big of a part of me it was when I was out there. So that's why I wrote that song. And it always reminds me of that. So it's always one I like to play for people.
Yeah, I think a lot of people probably kind of want to go out of their homes at this point because of the whole pandemic situation. And speaking of pandemics, a little segue here. You partook in a songwriting challenge and came up with something that, if this song didn't go to number 1 on the charts, perhaps it would go to number 2.
Man, that's it. That was an excellent segue. I guess a couple of weeks after it was probably a week after we got through the first 2 weeks of Flatten the Curve. Everybody's still naturally real worried about everything going on. I host an open mic here in Sweetwater, and a buddy of mine that comes up there and plays with me all the time, Philip Thompson, also super talented guy. He sends me a message on Facebook and he's like, hey man, I got this idea. And I'm going to start it with you. If you do it, I'm going to challenge you to a songwriting thing. If you accept, I pick the topic and you have 24 hours to write a song and post a video on Facebook. But remember, I get to pick the topic. And I'm sitting here thinking, man, yeah, come on, let's do it. Because at the time I wasn't working. I was bored out of my skull. My kids were home. They were driving me nuts. I love them. But at that point, their spring break had turned into 4 weeks long. So they were getting kind of, yeah, exactly. So they were getting kind of antsy, and I was like, yes.
Do things for themselves. Mine are little, man. They're little. I have to do like everything. Anyway.
Yeah.
So
we love them. I remember those days, though. I remember those days. Good now I got to fight for their attention. But so I told him, I'm like, yeah, you know what? Let's do this, because whatever you throw at me, I'm going to get you back. He said, all right, you have to write a country song about toilet paper. And that is where the ode to Charmin came from, because that was right about the time everybody lost their mind for the first time and started buying all of the toilet paper in the known universe. And you don't realize you have a favorite brand of toilet paper until all of a sudden you are reduced to buying the only thing you can find, which is that John Wayne toilet paper from Sam's Club. It's rough, tough, don't take shit off nobody.
Yeah, that one.
Yeah. And so that it was a love note to Charmin toilet paper, which is to this day still the strangest sentence to come out of my mouth. It was a lot of fun though. There were actually some pretty neat songs that came out of that. We had people writing songs about drive-through liquor and to-go margaritas and porch parties, and it was pretty interesting. Even so, I can't remember who wrote it, but somebody wrote a love song about falling in love with somebody that they met at like a quarantine picnic, and they didn't realize that it was their cousin until they took their mask off or something like that. It was, just silly, but we had a good time. It was a good way to pass the time and kind of a brain exercise.
It's absolutely hilarious. And yeah, you definitely channeled your inner Rodney Carrington on that one. Oh, man. All right, let's move on to some just for fun questions. And in light of the pandemic and all the Netflixing and the Huluing and all the whatnot that everybody's doing, what you watching these days?
This is good. Maybe this could be embarrassing, but I just started watching Breaking Bad for the first time ever. Not long ago. Yes, and no spoilers, please.
No, that is my husband's favorite TV show, and
I've never seen it. I'm the world's worst about.
Like, I even got I got our kids. Again, my kids are 4, 3, and like a year and a half, and so I got them matching T-shirts. And instead of Breaking Bad, it says Breaking Dad, and it's got the little blocks for the chemistry. Yeah, it's cute. It's precious. That was.
I love it.
Yeah, I think that was his Father's Day gift last year. We took cute pictures. It was precious. But yeah, Breaking Bad. Go ahead.
Yes, I just got into that for the first time. I'm not real good about jumping onto the TV show trends. I actively try not to watch any more TV than I have to. But yeah, we watched over the initial part of quarantine anyways, before West Texas kind of opened back up. We watched everything. We watched Stranger Things again. I watched The Office a dozen times before they took it off of Netflix, because that is my favorite show. My daughter dressed up as Dwight Schrute for Halloween last year or the year before. It was the funniest thing. That's probably on my Instagram somewhere, her dressed as Dwight Schrute. But yeah, so in Yellowstone, I finally watched the first 3 seasons of Yellowstone.
Everybody keeps telling me I need to watch Yellowstone. I haven't seen it yet. I've been watching Bridgerton.
Yeah, I can't get into I've seen a few people recommend that. I'm just
that and The Sinner.
What's that now?
The Sinner. So it was originally on USA, and the first season stars Jessica Biel, and she's a gal who, in plain sight, there's no doubt about it, she murdered this guy with like a paring knife or something. And
no kidding.
Why did she do that? And so they're trying to figure out why. And there's this detective who's like, admittedly, his first season, he needs to tone down the plant talk. He's just a lot. He talks about plants a lot. Dude, could you just investigate, please?
Well, it takes all kinds.
But yeah, and then the second season again follows that detective. It's for another murder, and then the third one is the same detective for a different murder of sorts. They think it might be a murder. It's a mystery. All right, so you're not watching TV much, but maybe you're listening to some music. What's in your playlist?
Right now, I've gotten lost down the old early college, late high school rock wormhole here lately. I've been listening to a lot of my gym mix primarily, which involves a lot of Pantera and Guns N' Roses and I have a bizarre playlist. It'll go from Miles Davis 1 second to Slipknot the next. It confuses and frightens small children sometimes because we'll be listening to some pop song that my daughter wanted me to download. And 2 years ago, before she had her own phone. And and then something terrifying like a metal band called The Ghost Inside. I've gotten into them. It's heavy metal and it's loud and it's obnoxious and they're screaming. But if you can actually hear the songs, they're actually really well written songs, which I appreciate. And I can't lift weights to Conway Twitty. Love them as much as I do. I don't want to listen to them while I'm in the gym because I need something to drown out all the other people making the strange noises.
Yeah, the grunters is what I call them.
But other than that, like I said, I'll listen to a lot of Texas. I'll put on like the Texas Music Now playlist and listen to just about everything on there. Cody Johnson, that guy to me is like George Strait for a new generation. I love him. He puts out such good stuff, and I'm trying to drill him into my kids' heads as well as George Strait. But and then, like I say, a lot of the classics. I still listen to Chris Ledoux all the time. We just kind of run the gamut around here.
Gotcha. You gotta have the variety. That's the spice of life, as they say.
Yep, balance in all things.
Yes. All right, now hit me with at least one item on your bucket list.
At least I want to see the Northern Lights while I am in Iceland. That is the goal, because apparently that is like the premier spot to go see them at. I don't know if it's because the sky is clear there or if they're just because how isolated they are, but I have always wanted to see the Northern Lights like at the best possible place. And so I've done a little research, and from what I can tell, I think that's supposed to be it. Either that or Greenland. I can't remember.
The
Greenland
Northern
be a
Lights
little
have
too
come
icy.
up in. This is the third podcast that it has come up in.
Yeah. See the Northern Lights and headline a show at Green Hole. Those would probably be top two.
Lofty list there.
Oh, yeah.
What's the worst thing you did as a kid?
Oh, God. Okay, without anything too self-incriminating or giving my kids any ideas, if they decide to watch this, the maddest I ever made my dad in my life, he went and bought me a go-kart, little 5 horsepower Briggs and Stratton motor on the back. And we absolutely ran that thing ragged. And we blew out the seals and O-rings and all that stuff. And I had a friend of mine, 12 years old, just like me, but his dad knew how to build race car motors. So we thought, with our combined knowledge, surely we can pull this motor apart and fix it. And in the 12 hours or so that my dad was gone, we had this little 5 horsepower motor pulled apart so much. There were pieces scattered all across this 2-car garage. And to this day, that is the angriest I've ever seen my dad in my life. And he's a super, super laid back, patient guy. But he was so incredibly mad about that. I genuinely feared for my life.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I can see one of my kids doing that for sure.
Oh, right. It'll happen.
Okay, so far, tell me, what's the worst thing that your kids have done?
The worst thing that you know what? I can't even remember any of them now. They've been pretty good kids. My son's the most laid back individual I've ever met in my life. I wish I had his level of, we'll worry about it later, which that could be the worst thing he does in his life, because he's a junior this year. And if you ask him what he's going to do after he graduates, it's, I don't know, I'll figure it out whenever I get there kind of stuff. So really and truthfully, that would probably be the worst, is his laid back attitude towards things. Me and mom are like, no, you've got to at least kind of start thinking about what's going on. But they hadn't caused too much trouble yet. Knock on wood. My daughter's polar. She's me made over as a girl, which is going to be terrifying when she gets in high school. But she's 13 right now, so it's just beginning.
I'll pray for you.
Yeah, ask me again in 5 years. What's the worst thing? And I'm sure I will have.
After you've performed at Green Hall and you've written with Rodney Foster.
All of the rest of this has gone great or fallen out. Well, this fallen out and the rest of it gone great.
It's just it relocates.
Yeah, it does do that.
All right, what's the most adventurous or riskiest thing you've ever done?
We, in college, in a condition that may or may not have involved exorbitant amounts of alcohol,
when you were 21.
Yes, I was 21 at this point. We may have, it wasn't breaking and entering, it was trespassing. We may have climbed the wall to the Texas Tech swimming pool at 2:00 in the morning with a couple of buddies of mine, a couple of girls, and a couple of cases of beer, and gotten busted almost immediately by the police, because Tech, at the time anyways, I don't know if they still do, had one of those swimming pools that had the enormous inflatable bubble to where you could swim in it during the wintertime, and it was heated and it was great. Well, during the summer, they took it off. And so naturally, we thought, we'll just go climb the wall. The bubble's off, we'll climb the wall. Well, they've got motion sensors. So they knew immediately. And I think they watched us on video until our drunk asses finished falling over this 10-foot wall to get into the pool before they were like, okay, fun's over, let's go get them out. And so right about the time we jumped into the pool was when we were asked to leave the premises.
But you didn't get arrested.
No, we didn't. Nice. They sure scared the snot out of us, and we had to wake my roommate up at 4:00 in the morning to come get it, because they held us there for every bit of 2 hours, making us think we were about to get arrested. So kind of a scared straight moment for us, I guess.
Did anybody cry?
I honestly don't think so. I was there with two people that were a lot more prepared to get in trouble. I guess they got in a little more sketchy situations than I did on a regular basis. And then the two girls that were with us, God love them, they were just some hard asses. They didn't crack for nothing. So I wasn't going to if they weren't. So that's where we landed on that one. But we all learned a lesson. We all did some community service and helped them put the bubble back on the pool before fall started. It was all good. I even actually met I ran into one of those cops at a show we played, and those campus police, which are part of Lubbock PD, but they're still campus police. I ran into him on a tailgate party we played my senior year there at Tech. We played a tailgate party, and this cop comes up, this campus PD comes up to me. He goes, "I bet you don't remember me, do you?" And I was like, "Oh, no, sir, I don't." I said, "I try not to have too many run-ins with the campus police." And he said, "And I know why you don't. It's because I'm one of the cops that pulled you out of the pool at 3:30 in the morning." And immediately I just turned red and I was like, "Yes, sir, I'm sorry about that." He just slapped me on the back. He's like, "Hey, did you learn your lesson?" "Yes, sir, I did." And he goes, "Well, then it wasn't that big of a mistake." So he was a pretty good dude about it. I got to give him that.
What's your favorite memory from college?
I got to open up at a now defunct music festival because of the way it was run. The opening act before Reckless Kelly at that festival did not show up because they did not get their guarantee ahead of time. And I got in for free. So I was already on top of the world because I was helping them do setup and tear down and things like that. And then the guy that was running it says, "Hey, do you want to get up and open for Reckless?" And my eyes just got as big as saucers because they're one of my favorite bands on the planet. And I said, "Yeah, what am I going to do?" And he's like, "Just get up there and play for 45 minutes. Just you and your guitar. They're going to set up behind you, tell stories, play songs, make people drink, buy beer." Okay. So I got to open up for Reckless Kelly, and then I got to hang out with them for 45 minutes after the show and drive them back to their hotel room because the old boy that ran it, he tried. He gave it his level best, but he did not do a real good job running that particular festival, which will remain nameless for that reason.
Gotcha. Understood. All right. What do you remember from when your kids were born?
When my kids were born, I remember terror. The sheer terror of it. We did everything backwards. We had my son early, and then we got married 2 years later. We didn't do the whole get pregnant, then immediately get married because it's the right thing to do. We were both, well, we're going to see if we can stand each other before we get married. Yes, we have a child together, but we're going to make sure we get along before we go and get married. Well, we did. It worked. So we had my oldest whenever I was 21, and then my youngest whenever I was teaching just north of St. Angelo, Texas. I was an ag teacher at 20, and just sheer terror both times because both times I was broke. The second time around, I was a teacher. My wife was on bed rest. I was making a starting teacher salary of like $27,000 a year, thinking, how are we going to do this? But then immediately, whenever you see both of them, just all that just melts away and instantly go into angry Papa Bear, stay away from my kids. I was suspicious of every nurse that came in both times. It was just like, what are you doing in here? What are you doing to my baby? But yeah, best thing I've ever done. So.
Absolutely. Spoken like a true Papa Bear.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so you're a little longer in the tooth with the parenting than I am, and your kids seem to be doing pretty well. Got any parenting advice for someone that has
toddlers?
I have toddlers.
Oh man, Benadryl for road trips. No, but in all seriousness, buy them a Kindle. Whenever my kids were relatively small, I'm joking about don't dose your kids. Anybody that sees this, don't dose your children. But what we did whenever they were small and we would travel somewhere, my in-laws bought them some of the first tablets that came out, those little Kindle Fires.
Yeah.
And we loaded them up full of their cartoons. And at the time, I was doing irrigation and I was working up in central Nebraska. We lived up there for 2 years. And whenever we'd come home, it was like a 12-hour drive. So I'd put the kids to bed at night, and then I would wake everybody up at 1:00 in the morning, and we'd take off driving. And by the time they woke up in the car and started watching their cartoons on their tablet, it was usually about 7:30, and I was at least through most of Kansas by that point. Wow. So it was half the trip. So yeah, travel at night. That's the best parenting tip I can offer.
Yeah.
Travel when everybody sleeps.
We did a road trip when I was about 20 weeks pregnant with our daughter. And so my boys were, I'm not going to do the math on that right now, but they were little. They're still little, even littler than they are now. And yeah, that was not the best idea we've had. Because we tried the travel at night thing. We'd make it to about 10 p.m. And then the boys would wake up screaming. So fun. So fun. Because we were
Yeah.
driving from Texas, picked up my mom in Arkansas, went through Tennessee and all that stuff up to Pennsylvania to see my husband's sister. And we're like, next time we see them, we'll just fly. We'll just fly. It'll be fine. We could get on a plane. We could fly. Because yeah, the RV thing it was when they're older, it'll be great. We'll do that again when they're older. Not right
Yeah.
now. Mm-mm.
Yeah.
So
It'd be fun with mine right now. Only other parenting tip would just be let them make their mistakes because they're not going to listen. At a certain point, whenever they start hitting about 8 to 10 years old, that's when the first part starts creeping in that mom doesn't know everything. You can warn them, but let them make their mistakes as long as it doesn't kill them. Because sometimes they just got to learn it the hard way. I was the same way, so I can't say anything.
yeah, my husband was definitely the learn it the hard way sort, and I can see two of our kids doing that because they're doing it now. What happens if you climb up on the cocktail table? You might fall down. You might fall down.
Yeah.
I'm going to help you. I'm going to help you. I'm going to show you how to get down. And then we're going to pull out our little slide, and you can go down the slide if you want to climb on something. But if you climb on the table, you might fall down. And there's that.
Yep.
All right. Okay. So, Nick, let's move on to Could You Not? This is where if you never get asked a particular question again, if you never have to deal with a certain situation again, I don't care if it's something related to traffic, just whatever it is that gets under your skin, put it out there in the world. Could you not?
Explaining my overwhelming dislike for cilantro. Every time, see, every
We're
time
in
I
that
say it,
21%. We're in that 21% of people that just, it tastes like soap.
yes, yep. And immediately everybody's like, well, how do you know what soap tastes like? I don't.
I
But you know
do.
what it smells like? Well, and everybody does, whether they say it or not. You wash your hands. Sometimes you don't get all the soap off. If you're eating dinner, my hand tastes like soap. It tastes just like it smells, people.
Yep. You
It
say a
tastes
bad
just like it
word when you're
smells.
7 and your daddy washes your mouth out with soap. Yes, you know what it
Yeah.
tastes like.
Oh, yeah. You never forget the taste of that lava soap.
That sandpaper soap grinding against your.
Yep. Been down that road before, too. But no, that's the biggest one because every time it comes up in conversation, there's always somebody at the table that thinks they're Gordon Ramsay. And they're like, what? You don't like cilantro? It's the best. It's not the best.
And that's another
It's the
thing, though.
worst.
It's like that's your taste buds. You don't get to control that. Like that's
Yeah.
just how you're built. It's like when people get offended because, oh, you didn't like Aunt Susie's cobbler. It's not that I don't like Aunt Susie. She's wonderful and all her stories from the olden times. But the cobbler, I'm sorry, it just,
But maybe Aunt Susie can make a better cobbler.
there you go.
That's all I'm
A
saying.
little less cinnamon. Okay, and moving on to why in the Sam Hill did we say that? And since nobody has picked Sam Hill yet, and you've agreed to, yeah, let's Sam Hill. I'm going to keep this brief because it is long, and I was like, I cannot do all of it today. So, it is believed that 1887, Samuel Ewing Hill, a general from Kentucky, was sent by Governor Bolivar to investigate the famous feud between the Hatfields and McCoys, which had already claimed more than a dozen lives. And reportedly, journalists wanted to know what in the Sam Hill was going on up there. There was one more where, in his book, The American Language, H.L. Mencken said the phrase derives from Semil, the name of the devil in the opera, I'm about to butcher this one, Der Freischütz, I don't know German, if that's what that is, performed in 1825 in New York City. So,
I
might
learned
be
something
from a
new
general,
today.
it might be from a German play.
The world may never know. But I feel a deep dive in Wikipedia coming up in my future because now I've got to read this lengthy explanation.
I've got so much more of it here. Like I read just a teeny tiny bit, like right there. There's so much more, and I was like, I can't put the people through that.
Maybe we can get Dan Carlin on that one.
Oh my gosh, somebody that can do it a little more succinctly than I can. All right, so what's coming up for you? When are you putting your songs out? Where are they gonna be? Tell me all the things.
Well, I'm working on a couple of other projects for some other people right now, but hopefully in the next 2 to 3 months, hopefully in the next 2 months, we're going to get recorded and at the very least get it put up on YouTube. At some point, whenever we get it recorded and mastered, we're going to get it up and try to get it everywhere. Spotify, Apple, anywhere that we can stream music. I'm going to put it out just because I'm writing them not just for my own enjoyment. I want people to enjoy them. I've got a day job, so I'm not trying to make a living at it. We're just going to try to put something out that people can listen to and hopefully enjoy.
Absolutely. All right. Well, it was very nice to have you. I enjoyed your songs, and hopefully we can hear
Appreciate
some
it.
more from you coming up.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, thanks, Nick. I hope you have a good night, and take care of those kiddos, man.
Will do. Thank you, ma'am.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
Alrighty, folks, thank you so much for checking out this episode of Bored and Curious. I hope you enjoyed it. There's a lot more to come, so make sure you are subscribed or following, and we'll see you soon.